General Qin, there's urgent news. The deputy commander's anxious voice came from outside the tent. I snapped my eyes open, instinctively reaching for the sword at my waist. The familiar red military tent came into view, with the war drum swaying gently in the morning breeze at the corner. Not the battlefield, not blood, not that rainy night. I was still alive. I looked at my palm, the deep sword wound that had cut to the bone was gone. That was the token of love Prince Yongning had left me before my death, along with his cold words, "My dear consort, forgive me." "General?" The deputy commander's voice grew more urgent. "Enter," I commanded, my voice still clear and bright, not the hoarse whisper of my dying moments. "General, people from Prince Yongning's mansion have arrived. They say the prince is coming to present the betrothal gifts today." I abruptly stood up and strode to lift the tent flap. In the distance, dust clouds rose as a procession approached, their bright red banners fluttering in the wind. It was today. In my previous life, on this day, I had gladly accepted Prince Yongning's betrothal gifts, becoming his consort and a mere pawn in his hands. My military achievements, my battle merits all became his talking points in court. And it wasn't until the moment before my death, when I saw him intimately entangled with his sister Yuer, that I finally understood everything. That night when I tried to escape, they set me up, arranging for me to unfortunately perish in battle against the Northern D. Afterward, they even framed my family for treason, leading to their execution. "Tell them I'm not in the camp," I ordered coldly, fastening my cloak. "But General, the prince's people have already seen your battle flag." "Let them wait." I mounted my horse. "Also, seal off the area around the temple ruins in the east. Say there are spies about." In my previous life, because Prince Yongning's proposal came so suddenly, I had no choice but to accept. But this time, I would make the first move. As for the temple ruins, someone important would appear there, someone crucial to my plans. As I galloped through the streets, I couldn't help but smile coldly. "Prince Yongning, this time I won't let you have your way. I wonder what expression you'll make when I tell you I already have someone in my heart. As for who that person is..." In front of the ruined temple, a man in white was polishing his sword. Hearing the hoofbeats, he looked up alertly, surprise flashing across his handsome features. "General Qin? I'll kill myself if I have to translate all of it now," I smiled wryly, dismounting. "However, I know you were framed. Prince Yongning falsely accused you of treason, forcing you into hiding." His sword paused. "You know me?" "Not only do I know you," I stepped closer, "I also know that you were framed by Prince Yongning. He forced you to live in obscurity with false charges of treason." His eyes flashed as he pointed his sword at me. "Who exactly are you?" "Someone who shares your enemy." I pushed his sword aside. "Prince Yongning is coming to present betrothal gifts to me today. I need your help." "What does General Qin want me to do?" "Be my lover," I smirked. "What do you say? Shall we work together? You and I both know Prince Yongning's true face." He fell silent for a moment before suddenly laughing. "General Qin, do you know what you're saying?" "I'm saying," I said seriously, "let's work together to pull Prince Yongning down from behind his hypocritical mask." "Just with me, a disappeared general, and you, a woman?" "No," I turned to mount my horse. "With an opportunity to eliminate evil." "General Chu, will you return to camp with me? Let's let Prince Yongning know his betrothal gifts came too late." "How dare you?" "You are standing behind Prince Yongning," shrieked. "General Qin, do you know what you're doing?" I glanced at her sideways. Still putting on that pitiful act. In my previous life, she had played the role of a gentle and virtuous sister-in-law in front of me, while secretly carrying on with Prince Yongning behind my back. "My prince, Lady Yu." I bowed respectfully, maintaining my composure. "I am unworthy of the prince's favor, for..." I deliberately looked towards Chu Zhan. "My heart belongs to another." "General Qin," Prince Yongning's face still wore a smile, though his eyes had turned to ice. "This is a serious matter. Perhaps we should discuss it in private?" "As you wish, my prince." I nodded, turning to command, "Prepare tea." Inside the tent, Prince Yongning sat in the place of honor, Yuer standing dutifully behind him. Chu Zhan stood silently by my side, his face concealed behind a mask, quite different from the spirited young general he had been in my previous life. He seemed more composed now. And who might this gentleman be? Prince Yongning inquired, his tone gentle but his eyes sharp as knives. My surname is Chu Zhan bowed, just a wandering physician. A physician? Yuer covered her mouth and laughed softly. General Qin has taken up with a mere physician? How inappropriate. What's inappropriate about it? I countered, does Lady Yu believe that physicians are beneath others? Yuer's face paled as Prince Yongning's eyes grew colder. General Qin, our marriage was decreed by His Majesty himself. How dare you treat it so lightly? Indeed, my prince. I replied seriously, it is precisely because this matter is so important that I dare not deceive you. Would it not be disrespectful to enter your household while harboring feelings for another? General Qin, Prince Yongning set down his teacup. Do you understand the consequences of refusing this marriage? The threat came quickly. I laughed inwardly, I do, but... But what? But I would rather face punishment than betray true love. I looked at Chu Zhan, who appropriately took my hand, the gesture appearing completely natural. Prince Yongning's teacup slammed onto the table. Very well. Very well indeed. General Qin, think carefully about this. Thank you for your consideration, my prince. I rose, I have thought it through thoroughly. After they left the military camp, Chu Zhan spoke softly, he won't let this go. I know. I smiled coldly. He'll definitely investigate your identity. So what? Chu Zhan seemed unconcerned. All he'll find is the identity of a wandering physician. No, I looked into the distance, he'll dig deeper. Sure enough, 3 days later, a secret letter arrived on my desk. It detailed Chu Zhan's movements over the years and his connections with several Jianghu factions. It specifically noted that this man's martial arts were exceptional, suggesting a military background. They're already suspicious. I passed the letter to Chu Zhan. He glanced at it, faster than expected. Then he pulled out a letter of his own. I've discovered that Prince Yongning secretly met with Northern D spies yesterday. My heart skipped a beat, he's going to target my father and brother. That's how it happened in my previous life. Prince Yongning first accused my father of treason, bringing punishment from the court, and then... History cannot repeat itself. I've already arranged protection for your father and brother, Chu Zhan said gravely. Prince Yongning's men can't touch them yet. I looked at him in surprise. You prepared for this? Since the day you found me, he smiled lightly. I knew you must know something. Weren't you afraid I might be working for Prince Yongning? I trust my judgment. He looked at me, his gaze deep. General Qin, how did you know all this? I froze. How could I answer that question? I could hardly say I was reborn, could I? Just then, urgent footsteps approached from outside. General, terrible news. The master has been kidnapped. I jumped to my feet. Where? At the south of the city. Before he could finish, I had already mounted my horse. Chu Zhan quickly followed. I'm coming with you. You don't have to. I must. His expression was grave. There's an ambush in the south of the city. A sickly-looking man lay in the makeshift medical tent outside the military camp, struggling to sit up. Doctor, my wound. Don't move, Chu Zhan said sternly, his fingers on the man's pulse. This wound is not simple. I stood at a distance, watching the scene with a slight smile. I hadn't known that Chu Zhan actually possessed medical skills. General, my personal guard Tiger whispered in my ear, that man is suspicious. I saw him reveal his martial arts training while pretending to be injured. I nodded imperceptibly, keep watching him. Don't startle the snake. By now, Chu Zhan had withdrawn his hand. Your wound was caused by a sharp weapon and has been festering for 5 days. The patient's expression changed. However, Chu Zhan continued unhurriedly, it's not difficult to treat. But what? The herbs I need are hard to find. Especially that snow lotus from Tianshan. Snow lotus? A glint flashed in the patient's eyes. As it happens, I know a merchant caravan that specializes in transporting medicine from the north. Northern D spy, indeed. I smiled coldly. In my previous life, Prince Yongning had used these spies to pass messages. Oh. Chu Zhan feigned interest. This caravan. They're in the north of the city, the patient said eagerly. If the doctor is free, I could take you there now? That won't be necessary, I stepped forward at the right moment. I need to consult the doctor about my headache. Write your prescription first, and come back tomorrow. The man retreated reluctantly. As Chu Zhan packed his medicine box, he whispered, "There is indeed a suspicious caravan in the north of the city." You knew already? Yes, he nodded. Someone from Prince Yongming's household goes there to collect something on the 15th of every month. My heart stirred. Today is the 14th. That's why they sent someone to test me today. Chu Zhan smiled coldly. They must be worried I'll interfere. Do you really know medicine? I changed the subject. A little, his expression remained calm. I've learned some over the years for this identity. Looking at his profile, I suddenly felt a pang of sadness. In my previous life, Chu Zhan had been such a spirited young general, but because of Prince Yongming's false accusations, he had to hide his identity, and even. What are you thinking about? He suddenly turned. Nothing. Before I could finish, he reached out to wipe the corner of my eye. Is the general feeling sorry for me? I froze, only now realizing I had been crying. Just as I was about to speak, hurried footsteps approached from outside. Chu Zhan quickly put on his mask, just as Yuer entered with her maids. Sister, she smiled sweetly. I heard that this doctor with you is quite skilled, so I came specially to ask for some medicine. My guard went up. Is Lady Yu feeling unwell? I've been restless lately, unable to sleep well. She looked at Chu Zhan pitifully. I wonder if the doctor has any good prescriptions. I cannot treat the ailments of inner palace ladies. Chu Zhan stepped back. Surely the prince's mansion has female physicians? But they can't cure me. Yuer stepped forward. Even if you won't take my pulse, just a prescription would help. As she spoke, she reached for Chu Zhan's sleeve. I quickly intercepted, Lady Yu. What? She smiled meaningfully. Sister, are you jealous? I wouldn't dare, I said coldly. I'm just rather possessive and don't like others touching what's mine. Sister jests, she covered her mouth and laughed. I merely came seeking medicine, why so nervous? Unless. She looked meaningfully at Chu Zhan, this doctor's identity is not so simple? Lady Yu thinks too much, I maintained my composure. He's merely a wandering physician. Is that so? She suddenly reached out, apparently trying to lift Chu Zhan's mask. I instinctively moved to stop her, but Chu Zhan had already gracefully dodged. This evasion only made Yuer's eyes shine brighter. What excellent martial arts skills, doctor. I learned some self-defense skills from years of escort work, Chu Zhan replied calmly. Escort work? Yuer gave me a meaningful look. So sister's love is a mere escort? Lady Yu, I said sternly, what exactly are you trying to say? Nothing, she stepped back with a smile. Just that, the doctor's movements remind me of someone. My heart sank. Had she recognized him? But that person, Yuer said dreamily, is dead now. With that, she left, leaving behind her meaningful laughter. I looked at Chu Zhan. Did she recognize you? Not sure, he shook his head. But she's definitely suspicious. What do we do? We'll deal with whatever comes, he suddenly took my hand. But before that, he whispered in my ear, we need to make this act more convincing. What do you mean? Yuer will definitely have people watching, he smiled. As your consort, I should act the part. We need to make everyone believe this is real. Chu Zhan's voice was low and enticing. Before his words faded, he had already lifted me into his arms. You. I instinctively tried to struggle, but met his profound gaze. There are people outside the tent, he whispered in my ear, his hot breath making my heart flutter. Indeed, from the corner of my eye, I caught shadows lurking in the tent's darkness. Prince Yongming's people moved fast. So we're putting on a show for them? I smiled coldly. He strode toward the bed without answering. In the dim candlelight, his profile was particularly distinct. Unconsciously, I reached out to touch his chest. He froze. Through the thin fabric, I could feel his firm muscles. Somehow, memories from my previous life came flooding back. In my previous life, at Dingzhou's city gates, I had crossed swords with him. He had defected to the Northern D by then and become their lead general. Riding a white horse, dressed in full armor, he cut an imposing figure. We fought dozens of rounds, neither able to gain the upper hand. Finally, I used a risky move, thrusting my spear forward, tearing through his armor and leaving a deep scar on his chest. After that battle, we crossed paths several more times. Each time we met, I could see the pain hidden in his eyes. It wasn't until that rainy night before my death that I finally understood the source of his pain. Now his chest was smooth as jade, without any scars. This body had not yet experienced those bloody battles. And I was determined to prevent him from walking down that path of no return. "What are you thinking about?" His soft voice startled me. "Nothing," I turned away, but he pulled me back. "Is the general feeling shy?" A smile tugged at his lips. "Weren't you quite forward just now?" "The act needs limits," I tried to push him away. "Who says I'm acting?" He suddenly flipped me beneath him. "General Qin, do you know how grateful I am?" "Grateful for what?" "Grateful that I met you." His fingers gently traced my features. "If you hadn't come to find me that day, perhaps by now I would have." My heart trembled. Yes, if I hadn't been reborn and found him in time, perhaps now he would have been forced into a corner by Prince Yongning's people. That Chu Zhan who faced me as an enemy on the battlefield would never exist now. "Don't think too much," I looked into his eyes. "You're safe now." He stared at me intently before removing his mask. That handsome face was inches from mine, his eyes filled with emotions I couldn't quite read. "General Qin." His voice deepened. "Why did you come to find me?" I couldn't answer this question. I could hardly say it was because in my previous life you defected to the Northern D and we fought to the death on the battlefield, so this time I wanted to prevent it all. "Because of intuition," I said softly. "My intuition told me you were wrongly accused." His lips curved. "You trust your intuition so much?" "Was I wrong to?" "No." He suddenly pressed his face into my palm. "You were right. So this time, I won't disappoint you." My heart stirred. This Chu Zhan, though he hadn't experienced those hardships, was still that upright young general. Just then, urgent footsteps sounded outside. "General. Something's happened to the master." "General. The Imperial Guard has taken your father away." Those words felt like ice water pouring over me. I abruptly pushed Chu Zhan away and sat up. "When did this happen?" "Just now. They say the master has been accused of embezzling military funds." I clenched my fists. As expected, Prince Yongning had moved against my father. Only earlier than in my previous life. "Prepare the horses," I commanded coldly. "I'll go with you." Chu Zhan put his mask back on. I looked at him. "You don't have to." "Wouldn't it seem heartless if your consort didn't go?" He smiled lightly. "Besides, I want to see what game Prince Yongning is playing." We galloped quickly to the Imperial Guard headquarters. From a distance, we could see a crowd gathered outside. Among them, one figure in a dragon robe stood out particularly. "Prince Yongning." I gritted my teeth. In my previous life, he had done the same thing, pretending to show concern while visiting, when he was the one who had set up the trap. General Qin, seeing me, he immediately came forward, wearing a worried expression. "When I heard about your father, I rushed over." Suppressing my anger, I bowed. "Thank you for your concern, Your Highness." "About your father?" He sighed. "I've had people look into it. The evidence is conclusive." "Conclusive?" I smiled coldly. In my previous life, I had also been fooled by this hypocritical mask, only realizing the evidence was fabricated after my father was convicted. This time, I wanted to see how he would maintain this lie. "May I see my father?" "Well." He looked troubled. "Your father's case is serious. Visits aren't permitted." "However." He gave Chu Zhan a meaningful look. "I'd like to ask this doctor a few questions." "What questions?" I instinctively moved in front of Chu Zhan. "I hear the doctor is quite skilled. I'd like to invite him to examine someone in my household." "Thank you for your graciousness, Your Highness." Chu Zhan bowed, his voice gentle, "but my skills are modest, unworthy of your attention." "Oh." Prince Yongning smiled coldly. "Then why does General Qin favor you so much?" "Your Highness." I interrupted sternly. "My father's case remains uninvestigated. Please uphold justice." "Justice?" He gave me a meaningful look. General Qin, do you know why your father is being investigated? My heart tightened. What did he mean? Someone reported that your father not only embezzled military funds, but also. He looked at Chu Zhan, associated with suspicious characters. What a clever move. I finally understood his intention. He planned to implicate both my father and Chu Zhan. General Qin. Prince Yongming's cold words cut through the air. You may think it through carefully. Your father, or. His eyes shifted to Chu Zhan, this suspicious doctor of yours. A threat. A clear threat. I silently laughed. In my previous life, I had also been fooled by this benevolent act until my father was convicted. This time, I want to see how you handle your own lies. Your Highness, I straightened my back, my father is innocent. Then perhaps General Qin should focus on clearing your father's name, Yuer chimed in sweetly, rather than keeping questionable company. I could see Chu Zhan's hand tightening on his sword beneath his robes. Before anyone could say more, a guard ran up to Prince Yongming and whispered something in his ear. His expression changed subtly. Well, it seems we all have matters to attend to. General Qin, consider your position carefully. You have until tomorrow morning to reconsider your choices. After they left, Chu Zhan spoke quietly, they're going to the North City tonight. The documents? Yes, he nodded. Tonight at midnight, a merchant caravan will arrive with more forged evidence against your father. I clenched my fists. Then we'll intercept them, his eyes glinted. I've already arranged everything. Tonight, we'll catch them red-handed. Looking at his confident expression, I felt a surge of warmth in my heart. This time, I wasn't facing everything alone. General, my guard Tiger approached quietly, we've secured the prison. No one can harm the master without us knowing. Good, I nodded. Now we wait for nightfall. As the sun began to set, I couldn't help but think of my previous life, when I had been too naive to see through their schemes. But this time. Stop thinking, Chu Zhan's voice pulled me back to reality. We won't let history repeat itself. I looked at him, surprised. Sometimes it felt like he could read my mind. Trust me, he said softly, so only I could hear. This time, everything will be different. And he was right. This time, we had each other. This time, we would rewrite our fate. As night approached, we began our preparations. The real battle was about to begin. The night was thick as ink. Most shops in the north of the city were closed, except for one tavern that still had lights burning. In front of the tavern, two men dressed as merchants were moving cargo. This is the place, Chu Zhan whispered. We were hidden on a rooftop across the street. He wore night raid clothing, and I had changed out of my military uniform. This scene strangely reminded me of my previous life when in Northern D territory, I had watched him from afar leading night attacks. Back then, he had been such a feared enemy general. What are you thinking about? He noticed my distraction. Nothing, I pulled back my thoughts. Those two men, they're spies? Yes, he nodded. There are 4 more sentries hidden at the alley entrance and in the tavern's backyard. Is the backyard important? The most important things are always in the backyard, his lips curved upward. Ready? Before I could answer, I saw a familiar figure emerge from the alley. Yuer. What was she doing here? Chu Zhan noticed too, didn't expect her to come personally. What is she receiving? I narrowed my eyes. In the dim light, the merchant handed Yuer a small package. Should be the documents Prince Yongming wants, Chu Zhan said seriously. Tonight is not simple. Yuer coming personally means these documents are extremely important. My heart stirred, could it be? Could it be what? I shook my head. In my previous life, my father had been convicted based on some documents. Could these be the fabricated evidence they planned to use? Go, Chu Zhan had already leaped down. I'll distract the people in the front courtyard, you check the backyard. Be careful, I instinctively grabbed his hand. He turned, his gaze soft, don't worry, this time you won't face everything alone. Those words warmed my heart. In my previous life, I had been so helpless when dying. If he had been there then. Shaking off these thoughts, I silently slipped into the backyard. As Chu Zhan had said, security was tightest here. 2 sentries patrolled the corridor, one guarded the woodshed, and another. "Who's there?" A sentry suddenly turned. I held my breath, pressing motionless against the eaves. At such close distance, if I were discovered. "Who goes there?" A shout suddenly came from the front courtyard, followed by sounds of fighting. The sentries were immediately distracted. "What's happening?" "Go check." The leader ordered. "You, stay here." After the others left, I swiftly subdued the remaining sentry. In the woodshed, several large boxes were neatly arranged. I searched quickly, soon finding a stack of documents in a hidden compartment. In the moonlight, I recognized them as military supply lists. And the handwriting and seals were identical to my father's. Well done, Prince Yongning, even managing to forge my father's seal. No wonder the evidence in my previous life had seemed so flawless. "Found it?" Chu Zhan's voice suddenly sounded. "Yes, I secured the documents." "The others?" "Temporarily dealt with." His face showed scratches. "But we need to leave quickly." Yuer recognized me. "What?" My mask fell off during the fight. His expression was grave. "She's probably sent someone to inform Prince Yongning." My heart raced, then my father. "Don't worry," he gripped my hand. "I've already arranged people to guard the prison. They can't touch your father." Just then, we heard dense footsteps approaching from afar. "Go." He pulled me up onto the roof. The pursuers were getting closer. Looking back, I saw a sea of torches in the moonlight. "Split up." I whispered, "Take the documents to the Chief Justice, I'll draw them away." "No." He flatly refused. "I can't leave you. Listen to me." I pushed him away. "These documents are more important than anything. With them, we can clear both my father's name and your innocence." He stared at me intently. "Promise me you'll stay alive." "Don't worry," I smiled. "I am General Qin after all." He suddenly leaned in and kissed my lips. "Wait for me." Watching him disappear into the night, I took a deep breath. "Prince Yongning, let's see how you handle this." "Over there." The pursuers were close now. I turned to run, only to see Yuer smiling at me from the rooftop ahead. "Sister, why such a hurry?" "Sister, why such a hurry?" Yuer smiled brightly in the moonlight. "Unfortunately, you can't save him, just like you couldn't save your father." I smiled coldly. "Is that so? We'll see who can't be saved this time." "This time?" Yuer caught the word sharply. "Sister speaks so strangely." Before I could explain, an arrow whistled through the air. I dodged, but the arrow still grazed my arm. Just as I was about to lose my balance, a familiar figure appeared suddenly, catching me firmly. "Chu Zhan." "The documents." "Delivered to the Chief Justice," he sighed in relief. "I'm glad I made it back in time. This time, I must protect you well. I can't let you die again." My whole body stiffened. What did he say? Can't let me die again? The documents? More evidence? Yuer's expression changed, then turned mocking. "So what? You can't escape anyway." "Really?" Chu Zhan sneered. "Just like how you arranged to kill Qin Mo on the battlefield last time? Like how you framed me, forced me to leave Great Zhou, and then..." "What last time?" Yuer frowned. "What are you babbling about? What battlefield? What frame-up? We haven't even..." She stopped abruptly, but it was too late. "Haven't yet?" Chu Zhan pressed forward. "So you are planning to deal with Qin Mo on the battlefield? You have prepared to frame her entire family?" Yuer's face turned pale. How do you know?" "These plans weren't shared with anyone." "Because I've lived through it once." Chu Zhan gripped my hand tightly. "In that life, you succeeded. Qin Mo died in battle, I was forced to leave Great Zhou, and finally died from a Northern D general scheme. But this life, I swore to change everything." "One life? Are you mad?" Yuer looked utterly confused. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Chu Zhan ignored her, turning to me instead, "So this time, I chose to stay. I wanted to find evidence of Prince Yongning's crimes, I wanted to protect you." I looked into his eyes, seeing endless pain and determination there. So I wasn't the only one reborn, he also carried memories of the previous life. What are you two talking about? Prince Yongning's cold voice suddenly rang out. What life? What rebirth? What are you two talking about? Prince Yongning's cold voice suddenly rang out. What life? What rebirth? I looked at Chu Zhan's eyes, those were full of untold pain and determination. So it wasn't just me who was reborn, he too carried memories from the previous life. No wonder he was waiting at the temple ruins, no wonder he knew Prince Yongning's plans so well, no wonder he said those ambiguous words. I understand now, I said softly, so you've been. He nodded in understanding, I knew you were reborn too. From the moment you came to find me. In the previous life, I had already defected to Northern D, how could you have known I was wrongly accused? Unless I had lived through it, I finished his sentence. Enough. Ewer shrieked, what are you talking about? What rebirth? What previous life? Let them finish, Ewer, Prince Yongning's cold voice cut through the night, I want to see what other stories they can make up. Chu Zhan pulled me behind him, coldly staring at Prince Yongning who approached slowly, not stories, but a truth you could never imagine. Did you think you could threaten her with her father's life, like last time? Frame me with false charges? How dare you? Prince Yongning roared, guards! Get them! Wait! A mighty voice suddenly rang out, His Majesty arrives. Torches lit up all around, hundreds of imperial guards emerging from the darkness, surrounding us. I exchanged a smile with Chu Zhan. This time, we could finally fight side by side, no longer as enemies but as the closest of allies. This time, we would rewrite our fate together. His Majesty arrives. The torchlight lit up half the sky, hundreds of imperial guards tightening their circle. Prince Yongning's face turned from ashen to pale, while Ewer was so frightened her legs went weak. Prince Yongning, the Emperor's voice was unhurried, do you acknowledge your crimes? I don't know what your Majesty means. Prince Yongning struggled to maintain composure. Is that so? The Emperor smiled coldly. Then how do you explain this evidence? The Chief Justice stepped forward, unfolding the documents in his hands. Your Highness conspired with Northern D, persecuted loyal officials, and falsely accused great generals. The evidence is conclusive, with your personal writings and seals intact. No, impossible. These things were supposed to be. Prince Yongning screamed, then realized he had spoken too much. Supposed to be what? The Emperor pressed forward. Supposed to be in your people's hands? Prince Yongning collapsed to the ground. Ewer rushed forward, throwing herself at his feet, royal brother. There must be some misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? I laughed coldly. Then what about those plans you mentioned? About killing me on the battlefield? About framing my entire family? Ewer's face turned deathly pale, speechless. Take them away. The Emperor waved his hand. General Qin. Your subject is here. I stepped forward and knelt. Your father is already safe and will be released immediately. As for you. The Emperor gave Chu Zhan a meaningful look. Do you recognize this man? My heart tightened. But Chu Zhan calmly stepped forward. Your subject Chu Zhan greets your Majesty. Chu Zhan? The Emperor raised an eyebrow. So you really are alive? Yes, Chu Zhan raised his head. Your subject has been gathering evidence, only to clear his name. The Emperor was silent for a moment. Do you know why I never investigated your case? Chu Zhan froze. I was stunned too. Could it be? Because I was waiting, the Emperor sighed. Waiting for you to uncover the truth yourself. Prince Yongning's power was vast, without concrete evidence, even I couldn't move against him. Now. Your Majesty. I couldn't help speaking up. This matter has nothing to do with General Chu, it was all my. No need to cover for him, the Emperor smiled. I know everything. Including your intimate relationship. I blushed. But Chu Zhan said, Your Majesty is perceptive. Your subject and General Qin are indeed in love, and we hope for your Majesty's blessing. This man. Who was pretending to be my consort earlier? Granted, the Emperor said decisively. General Chu shall be restored to his original position, sharing military command with General Qin. As for your marriage, we accept your Majesty's decree. We spoke in unison. On the way back to camp, the night breeze was cool. Chu Zhan held my hand and suddenly asked, "When were you reborn?" "The day he came to propose," I smiled. "And you?" "The day I was about to leave the capital," he sighed. "I was planning to repeat my mistakes and go to Northern D. That's why I came to find you." "Yes." He suddenly stopped walking. "You know, in my previous life, my biggest regret was not being able to save you. When I heard about your death in battle, I rushed back like a madman, but it was too late. My heart ached. I'm sorry for making you worry." "No, I should be the one apologizing," he pulled me into his arms. "If I hadn't been so impulsive and gone to Northern D back then, if I had stayed by your side." "But you stayed this time," I interrupted his self-reproach. "And we're both alive and well." "Indeed," he chuckled softly. "This life, I can finally stand proudly by your side, without mountains and seas between us, without crossing swords as enemies. Do you remember what you wanted to tell me before you died?" I couldn't help asking. That rainy night, he had said if we weren't enemies, I would definitely. I remember, he lowered his head to kiss me. I wanted to say, if we weren't enemies, I would definitely marry you. The night watch rang out, and the moonlight was perfect. This life, we finally got our wish. The end.